Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Hope Logan stood motionless in the middle of her tastefully furnished living room, which had been turned into a wedding planning frenzy over the last few weeks. Suddenly, the immaculate floral arrangements, the gold-trimmed candles, and the ivory silk drapes felt oppressive rather than lovely. Her heart pounded in her chest, but it was from betrayal rather than anticipation. Her mother, Brooke Logan, stood a few steps away, her face displaying a mixture of anguish and resolve. She had just done the unimaginable. She had dropped a bombshell that broke Hope's illusions and put an end to what should have been one of her best days ever. There was a secret that threatened to ruin everything about Carter Walton, the guy she was going to marry. After the emotional devastation of her past relationships, Hope had spent months constructing a future with Carter, the trustworthy and respectable COO of Forrester Creations, whose calm manner had been a comfort. She thought she had discovered something genuine and enduring. Everything was tainted now, though. She could still hear Brooke say, "Hope, you deserve the truth. You should know what Carter did before you marry him." Then she had told her about a scandal so sinister, so fundamentally different from the man Hope believed she knew, that it caused her to doubt her own judgment. Years before, Carter had been involved in a covert affair that put the life and reputation of a person close to the Logan family in jeopardy. Few people were aware of the cover-up involving an international adoption controversy, fabricated documents, and the tragic separation of a mother from her kid, even though the public knew Carter as the morally upright lawyer of Forrester Creations. Although Carter hadn't personally falsified the documents, he had assisted in the process because, at the time, he thought he was assisting a person in need. After years of searching for her child, the mother, an old friend of Brooke's, found that Carter was the source of the paper trail. For years, Brooke had kept quiet since she didn't know the whole truth and didn't want to cause suffering. However, she was unable to remain silent now that her daughter was about to wed the guilty guy. Hope's bridal gown rustled quietly under her as she sat down on the cream-colored couch's edge as her knees gave up. How could she make sense of the difference between the Carter she knew and the one revealed by Brooke? He had always been patient, caring, and encouraging. He had provided stability in a world that frequently felt chaotic, helping her to move over her heartbreak with Liam and then Thomas. He had pledged to be truthful, trustworthy, and to love her without conditions. Nevertheless, she found out from her mother that the man she loved had contributed to the dissolution of another family, just as her own had been so many times in the past. She recalled their late-night conversations, the private times when Carter would hold her hand and talk of creating a future and a family. He had expressed his desire to have children in the future, to do things correctly, and to safeguard the things they would build together. Had he been lying all along? Or had he evolved? Was it a ghost from his past that no longer defined him, or was the man from the scandal the same man she had grown to love? Hope wished to have faith in salvation. She had previously battled for second chances, particularly for those she cared about. This, however, felt different. This had a personal touch. Carter's face lit up with delight as he arrived at the house, as if called by the whirling maelstrom of emotion in the room, until he saw the situation. Brooke's defensive stance. Hope's pallid, quivering body. Her eyes were filled with unshed tears. He came to a halt. "What's happening?" With a tone of bewilderment and mounting worry, he inquired. Hope stood slowly. Her voice broke as she pleaded, "Tell me it's not true. Tell me that my mother's statement is untrue." Carter glanced at Brooke and then back at Hope. "What was it she said?" Hope remarked, her voice hardly audible above a whisper, "She told me about the adoption. The fabricated records. The woman whose child was lost." Carter's cheeks turned pale as his breath caught. "I sincerely hope that it will never reappear. At the time, I was unaware of all the details. I believed I was assisting someone in keeping their infant safe." With more force and volume, Hope stated, "You were aiding someone in stealing a child. And you didn't tell me." Carter started to approach her and said, "I was young. I was tricked. I was a different man than I am now." Hope cut in, raising her voice, "But you never told me. You never let me choose whether or not I could put up with that. You simply pretended that it had never occurred. Her eyes begged with Carter's. Because I was afraid of losing you. Her voice cracked as she continued, and now you have. The ensuing hush was intolerable. Brooke averted his gaze, evidently caught between relief and grief. She had damaged her daughter's happiness by protecting her. Carter drooped his shoulders. His eyes were in genuine, honest sorrow, but it wasn't enough. Not for the sake of hope. Not right now. Finally, she replied in a low but determined voice, I can't marry you. Not today. Perhaps never. Carter remained silent. As though he understood that no amount of justification could undo what had been done, he merely nodded. With sadness in every stride, he turned and walked away. With a finality that made Hope's heart tremble, the door shut behind him. The wedding was cancelled in the hours that followed. The flowers were taken down, vendors were cancelled, and guests were informed. For hours, Hope stayed in her dress, gazing out the window at the life she believed she was about to start. She kept thinking about whether her mother had made the correct decision or if she had simply lost her last opportunity to find love. Hope, however, understood deep down that the truth was important. Too many individuals in her life had fallen for false pretenses, remained in unhealthy relationships, or disregarded warning signs until it was too late. She had made a self-promise to never do that again. It was better to know, no matter how unpleasant. Clarity is preferable than comfort. Carter made another attempt to connect and provide an explanation in the days that followed. In an attempt to get a conversation, he wrote notes, called her, and even waited outside Forrester Creations. Hope wasn't prepared, though. She required time to reflect, feel, and mourn the future she had been preparing for. Her family came together to support her. Surprisingly, Ridge adopted a calm, sympathetic attitude. Steffi spoke out more, asking if Brooke had overreached himself. However, Hope didn't care what people thought. She had to make this choice and bear this suffering. She eventually met with Carter to obtain closure rather than to make amends. Their journey had started in the Forrester executive suite, where they sat opposite one another. From the time he became involved until he discovered the truth, Carter told her everything. He didn't beg for pardon. All he wanted was for her to comprehend. And finally she did. He has changed, she thought. She thought he felt bad about what he had done. She was still unable to ignore it, though. Love wasn't always enough. The truth had to be more important sometimes. Hope left that meeting feeling proud of herself, no longer merely a romantic idealist but a woman who had put her integrity, morals, and self-worth ahead of the ideal wedding. She had no idea what lay next. For now, though, she would concentrate on getting better. On reconstruction. On being a daughter, a mother, and a designer. And perhaps she would open it again after her heart had healed. Not today, though. Not in this manner. It's creepy that Daphne is obsessed with Carter. According to teasers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Daphne's fixation on Carter is becoming a bit unsettling. For all the information you require, continue reading below. Daphne is acting as though she has fallen in love with Carter and is devastated that he is back with Hope, even though it appears that Carter was only an infatuation of hers. Furthermore, Carter never suggested to her that he would go out with her. Daphne started kissing him without his permission, but it was only one or two. It's unsettling that Daphne is fixated on Carter. It's almost as if Daphne is pretending that she and Carter genuinely dated and that he left her for Hope right away. On social media, B&B fans undoubtedly had a lot to say about the issue. Her and Carter don't even know each other that well, some commenters have even said. They don't seem to have a history together or to have dated at all. She is now upset with Steffi for bringing Hope back. Daphne doesn't own the business, and she has no right to Carter. Carter is in love with Hope and isn't interested in you. Before you ever arrived in Los Angeles, he was with Hope. What will happen to Daphne next? I don't understand why people think Carter was leading Daphne on, commented another soap critic. Every kiss was started by Daphne, who was also the one who always leaned in close to touch him, etc. He never once expressed a desire to be with Daphne. Instead, he was entirely preoccupied with Hope. Additionally, a critic commented, "I believe that the writers will later show flashbacks of her and Carter having love." They didn't show how that evening ended for the dramatic effect of him hurting Hope after getting engaged, and he was depressed about Hope with Liam in their last moment together, where Daphne was kissing him. Daphne will be back with a baby. Few characters on The Bold and the Beautiful have been able to balance admiration and criticism as well as Carter Walton. Carter was formerly Forrester Creations' trustworthy moral compass, a man of principle and character, but he has progressively veered into murky area, and new spoilers indicate that his actions are going beyond what many fans never imagined he would. What started out as a noble character development has turned into a disheartening and incredibly self-centered pattern of conduct. Viewers are now wondering if Carter has lost any sense of perspective. Carter's ongoing incapacity to prioritize others over his own romantic and emotional needs is at the core of this developing disenchantment. Previously a man who respected boundaries, both personal and professional, Carter has lately repeatedly demonstrated a propensity to interfere in complex relationships, ignore enduring friendships, and put his own desire for affection ahead of other people's welfare. According to the most recent spoiler rumors, Carter might do something that would destroy one of his closest friends and jeopardize the faith that others have in him forever. For what purpose? Another forbidden romance? One more taste of approval? To be clear, Carter's descent into selfish zone was not an overnight occurrence. His infamous affair with Quinn Fuller, which ripped through the Forrester family like a wrecking ball, is remembered by fans. Quinn's then-husband Eric, who was also Carter's close buddy, was completely taken by surprise. Because Eric had always shown Carter a certain amount of respect, both personally and professionally, the betrayal was more painful. It was disgusting that Carter would then surreptitiously continue a full-fledged affair with his wife behind Eric's back. Even though the show made an effort to depict the relationship in a variety of emotional nuances, it was difficult to overlook the fact that Carter prioritized his own desires over loyalty, friendship, and honor. That was the pivotal moment, and regrettably, it appears he never turned around. According to teasers, Carter is now on the verge of getting himself caught up in a position that is blatantly selfish. It seems that Carter hasn't learned from his prior mistakes, whether it's pursuing a sexual relationship with someone who is already emotionally attached to another character, which is vintage Carter at this point, or putting his own desires in the midst of sensitive personal or professional issues. Even worse, he continues to cover his actions with the pretense of sincerity and passion, as though declaring love somehow justifies the mayhem he causes. Longtime watchers are irritated by more than simply love triangles, or, maybe more accurately, love hexagons. What irritates me about Carter's behavior is the obvious hypocrisy and double standard. This is the same man who at different times criticized Ridge, Liam, and even Thomas for acting rashly or messing with women's emotions. However, Carter defends it as something pure and unavoidable when he becomes enmeshed in his own needs. Really? Carter has always had options, and he keeps making poor decisions in the hopes of receiving pity. That is manipulative, not romantic. Carter may soon find himself at odds with those who have supported him through thick and thin, according to spoilers. It might be hard for supporters to support him at all if he does break their confidence once more. Regardless of how frequently he portrays the antagonist, he is gradually evolving into a character that views himself as a victim. Additionally, Carter never really acknowledges the pain he causes and instead keeps acting wounded and aggrieved, in contrast to someone like Thomas who accepts his previous depravity and actively works to grow. When you take into account how many second chances Carter has received, the situation gets even more upsetting. His positions as COO, legal counsel, and sporadic brand advocate have made him a significant player at Forrester Creations. The distinction between business and pleasure, however, is constantly blurred by him. It's time for the Forresters to reconsider how much loyalty they owe Carter if the spoilers are accurate and he is about to do another emotionally charged stunt at work, or worse, drag his current flame into a public scandal. A person can only continue receiving passes for so long before the harm they inflict is irreversible. What about his love interests? A concerning trend has emerged in Carter's previous liaisons. He quickly commits, gets overly passionate, and then, due to unresolved baggage, throws the relationship into a wall. Without genuinely establishing a basis of mutual respect, trust, or communication, he appears to be looking for immediate emotional fulfillment. Fans are already getting ready for the aftermath as spoilers suggest that another romantic Carter crisis is imminent. The fan following might eventually turn against him permanently if he once again leaves a woman in emotional devastation as a result of his selfish decisions. The fact that other characters, who were originally faulty but have since been redeemed, are receiving more accolades than Carter is especially telling. Consider characters like Steffi or even Brooke, who have made significant mistakes but exhibit development, responsibility, and a desire to improve. Carter, on the other hand, has been mired in a pattern of poor choices, self-pity, and little real progress. How often can we witness him tearing apart other people's mental stability while pretending that he is the one experiencing heartbreak? Worse, Carter's increasingly self-centered actions don't seem to be moving the plot in any new directions. Rather, it's getting monotonous, another instance of a promising character being diminished to emotional turmoil for dramatic effect. That's a waste, especially considering how much support he first received from viewers. Carter was given integrity, substance, and a purpose by the authors. And now they're letting him fall apart in the most annoyingly preventable way imaginable. Carter can still be saved, but the spoilers don't indicate it will happen very soon. He runs the risk of turning into a parody of everything he once opposed if he keeps ignoring the sentiments of those around him, putting himself in situations that aren't his to control, and justifying his worst actions as love. Better is due to the fans. Better is due to the Foresters. To be honest, Carter deserves better, but only if he's prepared to own up to his mistakes and begin behaving like the man he used to be. In summary, Carter Walton's decline into selfishness is a betrayal of all his character once stood for and goes beyond simply being a plot point. The annoyance is only increased by spoilers that hint at more careless behavior. He has changed from being a man of integrity to someone who is always looking for his next emotional fix, no matter who he harms in the process. If redemption is possible, it will require genuine transformation rather than just a heartfelt apology or a romantic gesture. Until then, viewers are left scratching their heads, wondering how Carter came to be one of the most self-centered characters on The Bold and the Beautiful. Spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful hint to a stunning scene of treachery, heartache, and self-discovery as Hope Logan abandons Carter Walton at the altar. The consequences will undoubtedly rock Los Angeles to its foundation. Viewers have been observing this strange connection for weeks, with many wondering if Hope was really prepared to move on from Liam Spencer or if Carter was just a safe haven following her mental collapse. Hope then delivers the ultimate shock on what should have been the happiest day of their lives. She leaves in front of everyone, leaving Carter speechless, ashamed, and devastated as the wedding falls apart in a dramatic way. However, what motivated her to act in such a spectacular manner? Did you have second thoughts? Cold feet? Or did that bride's smile conceal something much more sinister? There has always been a hint of quiet desperation in Hope's relationship with Carter, a wish to run away from her past rather than face her future. Hope appeared resolved to alter the course of events following years of turmoil with Liam, incessant waffling, betrayals, and love triangles that sapped her entire sense of value. And what better way to do so than to identify herself with someone who seemed to be totally committed to her, grounded, and loyal? Because he was successful, secure, and emotionally available, Carter seemed like the perfect spouse. However, in the emotionally driven world of The Bold and the Beautiful, love rarely endures on paper, and as the wedding drew nearer, the flaws in their fairy tale became apparent. Backstage rumors and spoiler leaks claim that Hope never completely let go of Liam, not just psychologically, but emotionally, and possibly not even physically. Her heart was still bound to the past, even if she may have told herself she was ready to go on. Rumor has it that Hope met Liam in a quiet, unexpected way a few days prior to the ceremony, a moment of reality that sowed doubts she could no longer ignore. Was it an impassioned request? A kiss? An admission? Though the specifics are unclear, one thing is certain: Hope was deeply shaken by whatever transpired. Enough so that she realized she couldn't honestly say "I do" when she stood in front of the officiant and looked into Carter's expectant eyes. The consequences were immediate. The guests let out a gasp. Brooke was appalled. Ridge averted his gaze, already bracing for the impending storm. What about Carter? He was betrayed in the most degrading manner imaginable, and he stood still, crushed beneath the weight of public rejection. By no means is this the first time that Carter's romantic dreams have failed. Supporters recall his tumultuous liaison with Quinn, his almost disastrous Parisian marriage that collapsed due to Grace Buckingham's meddling, and his unwavering commitment to Katie, who eventually left him. However, Hope Logan abandoning him at the altar could be the last straw for a man who merely desired to be someone's eternal companion. Fans are still questioning, though, if Hope was wrong to go. Or did she have the guts to face the reality before making a mistake she would always regret? The drama gets deliciously complex at this point. On soap operas, betrayed lovers frequently end up as martyrs right away, but in this case, the distinction is hazy. In the hopes that she might feel whole again if she worked hard enough, viewers watched Hope attempt to coerce herself into being happy with Carter. However, love cannot be willed into existence, and happiness cannot be produced. Hope may have harmed Carter by calling off the wedding, but she also saved them both from a lifetime of bitterness and emotional damage. Then there is Carter, a figure who has come under growing fire for falling in love too quickly. After so many public failures, many admirers believe Carter pushed this relationship too quickly and desperately in an attempt to prove he was deserving of love. He failed to notice the warning indicators, which included Hope's hesitancy, emotional detachment, and constant involvement with Liam. Was he looking for approval or love? Did he want to be picked, finally, categorically, without question, or did he desire hope? In any case, he disregarded the reality. In front of a surprised group of friends, family, and half the fashion industry, he is now paying the price. Additionally, spoilers suggest that this dramatic altar jilting will have significant effects on several other plots. First of all, Brooke is furious over Hope's potential future and reputation in addition to the public humiliation. As Brooke demands to know what happened and whether Liam was involved in this disaster, expect unpleasant interactions between mother and daughter. Speaking about Liam, sources claim that he will be deeply affected by what happened, although it is unclear if he will experience victory, shame, or dread at the storm he may have unintentionally sparked. Thomas, who is silently waiting in the wings, comes next. He is still much in love with Hope, as his fans have not forgotten, and there are whispers that he would use this as a chance to assert his claim once more. It's unknown if Hope will give him a fair shot at last or if she will get confused and lonely. But there's no denying that Hope's choice will have an impact on other men besides Carter. This decision will have an impact on the entire canvas, changing alliances and relationships in ways that no one can foresee. Theories are already rife on social media. Some people think Hope left Carter because she broke her faith in him after learning a startling information about him that he had concealed. Others maintain that Hope's marriage to Carter was only an emotional bandage that came off too soon, that it was always destined to end this way, and that Hope was never really over Liam. Some even speculate that Hope's father, Deacon Sharp, might have stepped in behind the scenes because he was dubious of Carter's intentions or because he didn't want to see his daughter enter a marriage she didn't completely trust. Regardless of the reality, fans are captivated by the unresolved questions, which only serve to fuel the flames. Who knows what will happen next? Is Carter going to get even? Will he withdraw once more, nursing his wounds and promising never to put his trust in another woman? Will Hope continue to be independent or will she get dragged back into the Liam whirlpool again? Will Thomas use the confusion to his advantage? According to spoilers, this one event, the abandoned wedding, will trigger a summer of reckoning, during which time prior decisions must be made and suppressed emotions will surface. Hope abandoning Carter at the altar might end up being one of the most talked about scenes of the year on a program that feeds on love entanglements and breathtaking moments. It's more than just a rejection, it's a representation of all the things that make the bold and the beautiful so alluring: love, treachery, inner conflict, and the never-ending quest to understand what your heart really desires. One thing is for sure, this story is far from ended, regardless of whether you feel sorry for Carter, sympathize with Hope, or want Liam or Thomas to step in. And a new chapter is already starting as the fallout from this disastrous wedding fades.